Welcome to Job Seeker Nation. Hey guys, how you doing? We're always streaming in all these different platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This week, no Facebook. Facebook is acting up. I don't know what it is, but anyway, we're here to help you guide you in your job search dilemma, and maybe give you some very practical guidance that you can apply to your job search as soon as you get off this call. So hopefully it will be useful to you today. Of course, with me is my co-host Jack Kelly. How are you, sir?
Hey, good. Very well, thanks. How you doing? And it's nice to meet you, Ruth.
Nice to
Yep,
meet you.
and
Nice to
yep,
see you,
and we
Mark.
have Ruth Sternberg, and good to see you, Ruth. Ruth has been with me once or twice on the Modern Job Search checklist. I can't remember, but
It's just
she's
once,
been
actually.
around. It is once. Okay, I could remember. It was last year. And she's great. Brought her to this show so she can spread her wisdom
And
amongst you all. But if you have any questions, feel free to go to the chat, interact with each other. Feel free to ask us questions. We'll be glad to interrupt what we're talking about as a base to talk about what you want to talk about and give you this job search information that you want. Hopefully, you are staying dry as where we are, we're just getting snow and more snow. Where Ruth is, she's got like a foot of snow. So if you're under that situation, I am so sorry. Uh, so let's go ahead and tackle some topics. There's so much going on. I could have gone on to a whole bigger list of topics, but we'll try to keep it here. One of the things that are coming up is the whole idea of raises and salary negotiation. I don't want to go that particular route, but I do want to talk a little bit about sick leave and mental health and family leave and how much it's not really a part of the American lexicon yet as far as any type of federal mandate. And there are people who are actually there are incidences where people are really having to choose between their job and their mental health, their job and their sick health, and taking care of parents and taking care of children. So since the pandemic has begun, this has become really more of the forefront. So how can job seekers find these benefits? And if you want to answer the idea of should there be a federal mandate or not, I'll let you. But really, job seekers need to stop focusing so much on the cash and really think about more about the livelihood. So, Ruth, you being the girl in the group, you go first.
Well, I thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Um, well, I think a lot of companies that I have known about have sick leave as part of their benefits, but I know it's not true of every company, certainly. And I definitely see value in everybody offering it. But I know, just to play the devil's advocate, I know that there's been a lot written about the cons of this too, because business, it's expensive for business to offer benefits, where
Hmm.
they're paying for their people not to be at work, right?
Hmm.
And so I understand that. I understand why businesses are not in favor of more regulation. I totally get it. On the other hand, I think it's the right thing to do because
Hmm.
there are a lot of single parents out there who are working. They need to be home, and some companies let you stay home with your kid as part of your as part of your
Hmm.
sick leave package. There are parents who need that. There are people, you can't go to work when you're very, very sick. First of all, you can't today. Look at the consequences, but you could really become very ill. I mean, I just think, I don't know, it's not right to me that there wouldn't be sick leave offered. So I guess I'm seeing it both ways here, which is not a very good answer,
Yeah.
but maybe it's because
Well, it's a fair one. It's a fair one. I'm following you. I understand what you're saying, Jack.
So, the way things have been playing out, we really haven't needed the government to intercede that much in the sense because it's a hot job market. The recent data shows what 4 million people quit again last month. There's about 11 million jobs open. So what I'm seeing is that these companies are doing everything in their power to try to attract and retain people. So that's kind of giving free college tuition, giving remote work options, hybrid work options, giving flexible schedules. Um, and when I say flexible, meaning, hey, if you want to come into the office, you come in. If you don't, you don't want to. You don't have to. If you want to come in 3 days, great. If you don't want to, that's cool. You could be a digital nomad and go work, live in other places. Some companies are saying, hey, if you're going to move from San Fran to New York and you go to a lower cost place, let's say Arkansas, you could get the same money. So they're doing this not because they're such saints and they're such wonderful people. I think they're doing, and some probably are, but I think they're doing it because they realize if we don't, they're going to quit because the numbers show 4 million, it's a lot. So they'll quit, go somewhere else. So when it comes to sick time, paid time off, I think that's going to be one of these things. If people ask for it, it may not be on the official menu when you go for a job and they kick off like, hey, what are your benefits? But I would say negotiate it. I would bring it up and say, hey, listen, I have, maybe a sick relative I have to take care of. Maybe I have some long-term COVID kind of thing that I need some extra time. Or maybe I just want some time. I've been working for 25 years. I deserve more than 2 weeks vacation. So I would like to have some, mental days off, some sick days, some work, So I think if the market keeps going this way, where it's still the job market is hot and it's really hard for companies to attract and hire people, for a lot of jobs, not all, but for a lot of jobs, the employee is going to be in the driver's seat. And it totally makes sense to bring it up and ask. Because if they don't, that also says a lot. If you get an offer and you're asking for some more sick days, and like, nope, can't do it. You got to wonder, like, all right, is this how it's going to be all the time? That you're just going to be no, and I'm going to have to fight for everything instead of like, well, no, we can't do this, but we could offer you something else instead. Like, all right, let's talk. So that's a good litmus test for how they're going to treat you.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
To
Go ahead,
just
Ruth.
piggyback on what you said, I think that's true about a lot of questions that you ask employers.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's far too much of, I'm just going to take what they offer because I need a job.
Yeah,
you have more control than you do. Yeah.
Yes, you do. But I'm going to add some caveats to this because I wrote a whole nearly 2,000 word article about this recently, and even I could have gone.
So Ruth, he's setting us up. So he did all the homework on this.
But I did, and I see both sides.
I see what you're doing there, Mark. You did all the homework on it, so all the ins and outs.
Right. Well, let me tell you the reason what prompted this, and let's just be frank and let part of the cat out of the bag. Generally, if you're an hourly worker, you don't have the same access if you were a white collar worker. Let's just go ahead and put that out there. Although it differs from company to company. If there's companies that would go ahead and, I'm not going to mention the name of companies, but there's a certain company that actually employs quite a few people in the United States, and they're the largest employer right now, and we all know who they are. But I think one of the things that actually prompted this research that I did and the question today is that in this situation, as large as big company, they don't offer the workers enough of sick leave, and you get it, but you have to jump through hoops and hurdles in order to get to it. But anyway, in December they had 2 workers that died at the facility because they were told no, they couldn't go home, and because they didn't have enough sick leave. Now, I know various scenarios, even back when I was managing. If somebody was sick, I don't want them to be there because they might be contagious to hurt everybody else. Then maybe there might be something that can be worked out. Maybe we can borrow some time, some virtual time, so to speak, where it might go against and that they'll pay the back as they earn, all that whole thing. But I think there are more and more people who are in situations not like that, but as far as even parental leave and mental health leave and those kind of things where there isn't particularly a name for it. And I know that there's some also white collar companies that are generally white collar they don't have the parental leave. You can't use the sick leave, and you can't use any other leave because there's nothing called parental, or there's nothing called mental health. And that's why I prompt this question. I know I asked about sick, and I should have, on my bottom third, I did put family, mental, and sick leave.
Yeah.
But all of that, to having said, that's really all of the same, isn't it? I mean, you're saying that, hey, I need some time to take care of me and mine. And to me, I would think that the companies would stop thinking in terms of what if people start taking advantage of me, as opposed to this is kind of this is kind of a way to protect my investment because this person contributes to helping the company and everybody else make money. So I just want to throw that question and that perspective back out to say that in understanding that, isn't it kind of the way to we need to reshape the way that we think about those kind of leaves. Go ahead, Ruth.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that, honestly. I mean, and people are demanding a lot more from
And they
employers.
should.
That's true.
And I think that's part of it. And I think that's part of it. And I think that in there are certain areas, employers choose some areas on purpose, I think. They choose some vulnerable areas to have companies. And, again, the difference between white collar and blue collar manufacturing and all that. It's very interesting how the blue collar uh, companies will, or the companies that where there's retail and there's hourly workers, they choose one location where they may not be hip or educated
Mm.
to and have access to information, as opposed to if they were downtown Chicago. I just find that a very interesting discussion to have one day. But all that to say is that sometimes it's not a matter of people should be able to, people don't have the access sometimes to the knowledge yet. Even though we're in America and we have all this technology, it doesn't mean they have it right in front of them. But go ahead, if you need to finish, Ruth.
I think you make a good point, and I think that's why I think those of us in the career industry, we can step up a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah.
We can tell people that they should advocate for themselves, for what
Hmm.
they need.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Absolutely.
fear. I mean, people operate from a place of fear most of the time, right?
Right. Hmm.
I think
Absolutely.
that's what I love the most about working with job seekers, is that I help them transcend their fear and understand that they actually are worth something, and they have a right to work and be valued. Something that maybe the three of us take for we probably we feel that easily, but not
Yeah.
everybody does. And so that's valuable work that we can be doing.
Well, Ruth, let me ask you,
Absolutely.
as a confidence coach, what would you say to somebody who maybe they're in between jobs, so they don't want to push too much because they just want a job. So they're like, okay, whatever, I'll take whatever. Or even somebody who has a job, they're happy, but they want to do something better, but they lack that confidence. What advice would you give? And how could you kind of approach that hire manager HR to plead your case or state your case to get that extra time off, that extra vacation day, that extra sick day, that extra money, that extra bonus?
I think, well, one thing that does happen, and maybe it's happening a lot more, is the stay interview. You're probably familiar with that.
No, what's that? The
Yeah.
what? Oh, the stay interview. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought you said the state interview. I'm like, wow.
Stay.
Stay. Okay.
Why?
Yes.
My instinct would be to say, why don't you go to your boss and ask for a meeting just to, see what we're working on, what we need to be doing. Maybe, and during that time, that's when you can talk about suggestions for things that could happen that could make the job better,
Hmm.
And I know there are companies who do these interviews too, where HR will interview employees and ask them questions about, what they like and don't like about their job. They want to keep the people, so they're trying to figure out what makes people stay, what would make you not leave. And That's what makes me feel like it's a good time to have this conversation, because companies are concerned about retention. I don't think you need, I do say to people, you shouldn't do it in a confrontational way, you know? You shouldn't just say, well, I'm unhappy about some stuff, I need to talk to you about it. Be positive about it. Just say, gosh, I really love my job, and I've been thinking about a few things that might help me do a better job, and I really like to kind of just take a temperature and see where we are and get a conversation going. That's what I would do.
Now, how
What do you
about
think,
someone
Jack?
who's not at the company, but they're interviewing
Ah,
and they're trying to get the best deal possible, but they're a little nervous.
well, first of all, before you go into any situation where you're looking to work somewhere, it's always a good idea to find out as much as you can about this company before you go in there. So you don't walk in not knowing anything and having to ask every question cold, you know? You can ask people who already work at the company questions about how'd you get your job here? What's it like to work here? Oh, do you really like it? Oh, how long have you been here? Just kind of try to figure out what the culture is like there. Then when you go in, you already kind of know certain things about them. Then you fill in and ask some additional questions. You can ask them about their policies. What are you guys doing during COVID? I think that's a logical question. That could be a segue into sick leave policies, maybe. Right? So if you go in partially prepared, at least you know kind of what you're already dealing with, and then you can fill in. What do you think, Jack?
It depends on the person, and because there's some people who are very aggressive, and oftentimes the people who are very aggressive don't even have the right skills, which is the crazy thing. The people you
Yeah.
ever see that? The people who are the loudest and the push the most are the ones who you probably don't even deserve to get those extras. And usually it's the really good people who are really awesome and have great experience who are the most humble, and they find it hard to ask for these stuff, which is so unfortunate that it's such a
Practice.
upside down. I'm sorry.
Practice.
Yeah. So, because it's easy for me to say to say it, but I could get it if you're going for that interview and then you're like, well, you only offer me, because I've placed thousands of people, and I could see it's hard for people to go and say, hey, I want X amount of vacation, I want this, I want that, because then they feel, hey, I'm going to be too pushy and maybe I'll lose the job offer. Maybe they don't ask enough, and then they're going to resent it when they get in there because they feel they were taken advantage of. So those are really tough things to handle. I mean, my suggestion to answer your question would be just to be forthright, to have what you really feel you're worth. Feel your worth in terms of your compensation, your worth in terms of kind of what benefits are offered, and somewhat based on your health reasons, what you need to do. And then also for your mental health, how much time do you need, in order to have a good work-life balance. I would throw in the mix too about remote work or hybrid work or other things. If I want to relocate, will I still get paid? So it's almost like at this point in time, a laundry list. And I'm a big believer for people who are watching this now and then will watch it when we upload it again on line, is you could be polite. And I like what you said before, Ruth, without being pushy or just being angry about it. But if you're very polite and just put out what you're looking for, like, hey, Mark, I've been, I've been in this sector for the last 30 years. And I think 2 weeks is a little bit light with only X amount of days off. I think what would be more appropriate, and I've done my research, as Ruth said, I've conducted my research, done my homework, asked around. It seems the standard is such and such, such and such, such and such, and then give a reason, pitch really is why you should deserve that. And then, as I mentioned before too, you could judge their reactions, because if a company hears you, because then they'll say, Jack, I hear maybe because of COVID and what have you, you really need some extra time. If that's important to you, let's see what we can do. Or they're just like, no, our rules say this and you can't. And that makes it actually sometimes easier for a candidate, because then it's very black and white. Like, all right, this is how you are. I'm not really cool with that. Or, hey, they're willing to work with me. I might not get everything I want, but at least they're hearing me and they're going to try to make overtures to make it work. So that's kind of a good tell when you're interviewing. Are they open-minded?
Yeah, and that's something that people can really find out before they do, like I said, before they actually start interviewing, is
Yeah.
find out, search press releases, definitely talk to old employees. That's probably number one. And sometimes even if companies offer sick leave or some kind of leave, you got to also ask the other question too, is that, okay, how soon, how does this work? Don't just ask blanket if they have it, because you may only earn X amount per month to get only 5 days a year. And when I remember when personal time offers came out and companies started offering, some companies began to pull back because they said, well, there were a lot of people who weren't using it. So there was no use of offering 15, 20 days. We just offer 9 for all sick leave and vacation. Going, what? Yeah,
Oh
because
yeah, that I was in an employer
that
for a long time, and
that
that's what
was
they did. Yep.
and yeah, so so they backpedaled off of it, not realizing that, yeah, you might have a great year of not being sick, but what if you do have a year where you need surgery? Then you only get X amount of time, and then you go to disability, like, for real. There's a whole, you have to navigate very wisely and be very specific about the information you find out and see what it's going to look like. So what if you talk to somebody who says, "Yeah, that I can get 15 days of vacation or 15 days of leave," and they find out, say, "Yeah, well, I worked there 10 years to get 15 days." So therefore, you got to know what questions to ask and to know and get really specific. And that is kind of the new. That's almost as good as cash in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, because you're getting paid for that time instead of just
Yeah.
worried about, can I make 10,000 more dollars? And think, you got a family, you got a sick mother, you got to think kind of ahead and look at that and think about your livelihood, not just what's going to end up in your pocket in the long term. Jack.
Yeah, Ruth, what do you think of this? Just the other day, I was interviewing some woman for a potential article for Forbes, and what her startup is, they tackled the PTO, the paid time off thing, and their thesis is this: that most people, even if you have unlimited, time off, don't take it. And I'm not going to do it justice,
Well, right.
but what happens, the way she was explaining it, is that okay, if you're, typical
Mhm.
worker, have X amount of days off, and the company, that's money that they owe out to the person because they're paying them even though they're not working, so they have a liability on their books. For the person, sometimes they feel like, I don't want to take too much time off, I'm worried about my job, so they don't use it, and sometimes you lose it, or you use it or lose it. Or for some companies, like I know my parents were teachers, and when they retired, they had like so many days off, but they got paid for it.
Yep.
And so they're trying to kind of find a better way to manage it. What they're trying to do is work with both the employer and the employee. So for the employee to be, it's okay to take your day off, and to train the managers to say, hey, let them know to take the time off. And we all know, like when managers say, sure, you can take the day off, but you can hear in their voice, they don't really want to give you the day off. So they're trying to kind of, so it's not a government, because we, as you brought up earlier, Mark, maybe not a federal government kind of thing, but more of, hey, let's put this on the table so both parties feel comfortable. So the company doesn't feel like the worker is just taking advantage of unlimited paid time off or
Invest
whatever.
It's an investment into the company because you're protecting the employee. But a lot of
Mhm.
people don't look at the fact that they're thinking of, well, we got to protect against being taken advantage
Yeah.
of. And is how did you get into business if you're always thinking of those terms
Yeah.
of that you're protecting what's yours? Erica brings up a good point. She says asking
Mhm.
about PTO works is important. Some only permit it in the off season or require pre-approval. Hmm. Not so appealing for working parents navigating COVID lockdowns and snow days, which is how relevant is that? And really, a lot of this is about COVID. A lot of this is not just just people having time to recover, but also you're protecting the business by allowing that. And even the federal government had to step in a little bit and say, okay, you could take COVID if you feel, remember at first they were saying, take a leave. You feel like you've been exposed and that you're experiencing some symptoms, and so that you won't happen. Because I know when my son works at a bank, and one night he went in and said, "Oh, we shut down for the week because a bunch of people got COVID." Great move, but there could have been also some things that could have protected that for the one employee who was scared to miss work and came in anyway and affected all these folks. So I think that that's a very good point.
Well, I think that some of this is about normalizing what is acceptable. I think that we in this country have this work ethic thing going on where our jobs become more important than anything else in many cases,
Mhm.
right? I remember years ago I used to I'd say to my dad, "Oh my God, look at how much vacation they have in Europe. They get a month off or 6 weeks off in the summertime." And my dad would always say, "Well, that's why America is so much farther ahead than the rest of the world, because we work, work, work." you know? And that's kind of a thing. I mean, I think it's gonna I think it's starting to loosen up, but I think it's gonna take some time. I think we're so conditioned to chase the dollar and the profit and there's like this peer pressure. There is. I mean, oh, it must be nice. You can take a day off. I can't. We still have that here. And I think we have to change our mindset to not
We have
constantly
to,
thinking this way. And
yeah.
it is going to take some time. What I think is so interesting is just that this big shift is happening. I have my master's in history, American cultural history. And I've always been fascinated by these trends that happen across society that kind of change habits and behaviors.
Mhm.
It's really going to be up to historians 75 years from now, looking back, going, look at this great shift. Like we had with it when people came in from the farms to the cities, and we had to think about the workday, the 8-hour workday started, and that whole mentality. Here we are again. We're starting like a whole new thing now of trying to redefine what is work and what does work look like. And I think it's complicated. It's emotional, it's psychological. It's not just about money or any of this stuff.
Yeah, do you think we still have that hustle-born culture, or that's kind of dissipated a little bit?
I think it's starting to I think it's starting to loosen up and go
Yeah.
away. But I think it's still there kind of. I do, because I still
But
hear people talk about how overworked they are. And what, Mark, were you going to say?
what I was going to say is, well, before and part of saying that, we're America and we're great and we do great things because we work so hard. The other question we hardly ever ask: at what cost?
Well, yeah.
That we do. At what cost do people think about how there are 22 developed countries in the world that manage sick leave, parental leave, and guess where America places? We're dead last. We're dead last. Sweden has one of the best sick leaves in the world. And we can make all the kind of excuses we want. Say, yeah, but they don't have our technology, this and the other. But people are kind of healthier when you get 52 weeks for every 2 years you work. And that's a federal mandate. Now, I'm not saying that the federal government needs to jump in, because really, because we don't have the federal government jump in, we had employers jump into our lives and to take over, thus shaping our view of work. Yes, work for me, and we leave the government out, and then I will tell you how this will run. You'll be here 9 to 5. Some of you will be here 9 to 9, and
Mm.
then maybe even take work home. And then you'll need to come back. You might be able to come back at 10 o'clock, but now you got to stay till from 10 to 9 still. I mean, think about who has that jurisdiction. We've said, okay, leave the government out, but employers take the control of the government, but still in some kind of funky way, they're still sleeping in the same bed. They're just not sleeping right next to it.
Well, look generationally at who's managing big companies. Where the shift isn't complete. There's still a lot of people around who, came up through the years where, you work. And younger people don't really think like that. It's the turnover is not complete, right?
Well, yeah, right. The pushback has begun. Baby boomers is my generation. But ultimately, yeah, but that's because it was passed on. And we were sold a bag of goods. You said, you do what's work, you do what works. So, you take what worked for us. That doesn't mean it's working for everybody else, because we look at what it's creating. And, think about too, that employers lied in a sense. They lied. They said it is impossible for us to go remote work. Well, what happened in 2020 in March? By June, we were all working remote. Or those who said that they wouldn't, they found a way. So therefore, there's the distrust too. Now it is not just the government, but the employer.
We make assumptions too that aren't true, right?
Right.
I can remember asking to work at home and being told no, and I'm like, okay, I just,
Yeah,
now.
all those studies that came out, that says people are much more efficient at home working, and we've never been more productive. And some companies got that memo and ran with it. So from now on, stay home. We'll all stay home. And others say, well, but I like the control aspect of it. So, here we are having that discussion. But I think that going back to job seekers will kind of have to decide what that's going to look like and whether it mesh with their life. And you can't, but I understand some people are trying to survive, and that's one set of behavior. But the other people say, not so fast. I have a choice here. And I want to take some time to look at it and find something that will work for me. And which
we can only hope that beneficial changes that start, higher up in the food chain will benefit people lower in the food chain too, right?
Right.
I mean,
right. Well,
it takes time. I mean, in all fairness, I think business has to figure this out, and they're starting to.
Yeah.
Things don't trends start, but they move very slowly. You just, for how many years have we been talking about the fact that the high school model doesn't work very well anymore? The old high school model. High schools still kind of look the same, don't they? I mean, when are we going to get there? So
yeah, well, teachers are saying something about it, and I think too. You think about colleges, and Jack and I heard me rant about this before. Colleges are using the same model that they used when I was going to school, but they're paying 5 times more money than I had to pay. I mean, that's like going to a restaurant and you pay $30 for a steak. Now you got to pay $150 for the same steak, and maybe even a smaller size. So there's your inflation too. But I think, ultimately job seekers will need to start to. They will have to be much more passionate and engaged about fending for themselves for the time being. But there's also the aspect too that employers will need to start looking at, that when you hire someone, you're not just hiring to do what you want, but you're also need to protect you're ultimately protecting your investment is the way that's the narrative that I've come up with. So let's move on. Unless Jack, you had something else to add.
I'm good.
You're listening. I could tell. I could see the steam coming in.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about employers and really how job seekers present themselves, and what is it about good story that impresses employers. And I think that makes all the difference a lot of times between a great presentation and someone who, that two people might have the same qualifications, but one has a greater presentation that wins an employer over. Go ahead, Ruth.
I actually want to defer to Jack on this one.
All right, sure.
Recruiter.
So,
I want to hear what you have to
it's
say.
interesting because I am pretty opinionated generally, but also on this topic. With a story, right? It depends how you categorize story. If someone tells me a story about their career arc, but it's a story and I don't know where this story is going, and and it keeps going on, and they start adding up protagonists in this and villain, and my head starts to explode. But if you say a story, meaning, hey, I have 20 years of tax accounting for the music industry, and here's what happened, and now I'm looking for a job, so I'm looking for a similar job as a tax accountant in the music industry here. Okay, that story I like, because that story is grounded in reality, in that you've told me that here's what you've done, your experience, here's what you're looking for. Okay, now we could talk. We're on the same page here, as opposed to having someone kind of launch into this story where they think they're going to wow you because now we've bonded and you've told me so much personal details and you enveloped me in your story and now I want to hire you. I'm like, wait, no, I want to know, what did you do? What were your responsibilities? What were your successes? Give me some examples of that. What are you looking for now? I'll watch TV for a story, or we'll see a movie. In this instance, I need to know like who you are, what you're about, and why would a company hire you? So yeah, because we've all get that, like in business too. You always hear like people sometimes you have a meeting or you have something and they launch into like their personal story of triumph, because I'll get this with a lot of PR pitches, so this person started out doing X and they overcame X and now they're doing this. And I'm like, all right. Yeah, great. Yeah. They started out, delivering papers. Well, yeah. Well, they didn't start out. They were a kid and they were delivering papers. All right. That's not really starting out delivering papers. It's like he started out as a baby and now look at her. She's a CEO. Oh, yeah. So yeah.
See, I think some of the problem is the word story.
Yes.
It can mean so many different things. Right.
True.
And I think of, in this context, I think of story as just being telling about something that has happened or is going on that is relevant to the conversation, right? An example of something could be a story, as you said, Jack. I tell people when they go in to talk about themselves in an interview that they should do exactly what you said. You are telling the person listening that you've been in this industry that they're in, and you've accomplished these certain things in the industry that they're in, that, by the way, are relevant to what they do. And you're so looking forward to discussing this with them.
Yeah. How about this? I will concede this, though. I would be open to, tell me what you think, Ruth. Once you're able to just articulate, who you are, your background, your experience, why it relates to the job and why you'd be good for the job. Then then when you're having that conversation, after now you're the hiring manager and you kind of get, okay, I get it. Now you feel, all right, Jack has the right background experience. Now it's more personal. Then I could understand if you ask and you say, hey, tell me a little bit, about yourself. Then I could see kind of maybe giving a little anecdotal story, overcoming some challenge in the past when you were younger, whatever the case may be, because now you've transcended it. You kind of both sides agree, okay, we're a match. Now we're just getting, do we vibe together? And then I could kind of understand. And then I'm cool with that, because now it's, can we bond? Do we feel the same thing? Because we had work together every day. So we want to see, are we on the same wavelength? That would be nice. Then I'll concede that then I'm okay with hearing that story. But just
That's
a story and not
at it. No, yeah, I like that, because you're right. You have to get past the initial.
Yeah.
Okay, we're here to talk about this job, and we agree that you're
right,
at least baseline qualified. because the reason you ultimately get hired is that you fit in with everybody who's working there. So they kind of want to know you a little bit, right?
Yeah. How can I run this by both of you? Do you think it's also like I'm a Gen Xer? Do you think it's also a generation or age thing where I do notice, and I don't want to paint a wide brush or I don't want to make it like I'm disparaging any group, but I've noticed with more younger groups, they're more apt to kind of weave a story, a narrative into everything. Where I think and I'll just speak for Gen X, we're more like matter of fact, like here it is, boom, 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 boom. So it could possibly also be it's just different mindsets. Like they think one group acts a little different than the other, and one maybe it's okay then if you're millennials, that's how you communicate, so that's appropriate, and maybe Gen X's
Well, I
are
think it's a great point because look how people in their 30s were raised. Look what they were raised with. The media they were raised with, the orientation to communicating is a little different, right? I mean, I guess I'm a very, very late boomer, but I identify more as a Gen Xer, and I feel exactly what you're saying. And I also was a journalist for a long time and a grant writer. So I know, get to the point, get to the point,
Yeah.
get to the point, connect the dots.
Right.
But I also wasn't raised being on social media. I wasn't raised with, everybody says story is so central to the message now, and advertising, marketing. They've been bombarded with story, history of the company. This is what this product is like. That, you know what I mean? It's
interesting.
You're right. It is just a way of seeing, and I think it's so important in the workplace because we have to remember that right now, for the first time in history, there's going to be like 3 generations working together in an office. And we don't.
As is happening now.
Pardon?
As is happening now.
Yeah. And it's so interesting the way people communicate and view problems and situations.
What do you think about this, Ruth? Not too much of a tangent, but I've noticed definitely on LinkedIn that.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Lauren. I'm calling for Medicine Heating.
I still have a landline. I think I'm the only one left in America.
I think you are.
There's a landline. I don't know why we never got rid of it.
Bad. Don't feel bad. We have one too. My wife.
Oh my God.
It's either Walgreens or like this is because our heating was all messed up. That's why I'm wearing a t-shirt. It's really hot in here.
Okay.
So on LinkedIn, I've noticed it's like for on the whole, the younger demographic are more apt. What I've noticed, and again, I don't want to paint generalize.
Yeah.
But they'll be more of like, hey, look at me. Here's what I did. Look what I've done. Look at me. Whereas, baby boomers and Gen X are more of, here's the information I want to give you. Here it is. It's very different. It's starkly different. And I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. It's just very different.
It's just a difference. I'm thinking it's just a difference. It's kind of like the DISC test.
No, what's that?
People think, pardon?
No, I don't know. What's that?
It's one of those personality test things that you take. Okay. And it shows how people relate in a business atmosphere. People can be very different. Some people relate socially. Like that's how they do business. That's how they understand each other. Then there are some people who are very concrete. They just give me the information. I think it's generational, but it's also just personality.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I think there's a difference in generations, the way they take in information. I think younger people can go through a lot more information a lot more quickly and get to the meat of it a whole lot quickly than our generations have in the past. We wrote very long books. We made storytelling a real long to-do thing. And if you listen to the way a lot of them communicate, they're able to tell stories in 1 to 3 sentences. And they're able to tell, some of them are able to do that, some of them not so well. But all that, the best of them are able to be able to get to the point a whole lot quicker. As opposed to, but I think that, if you look on LinkedIn, some stories are being told the same stories are being told over and over again, and somehow maybe maneuvered to make different points. I don't always enjoy those posts, quite frankly. And a lot of them, but they tend to get a lot of people to follow them, because the whole now sexy now is the whole be vulnerable, be open,
Yes,
and a
that's what.
lot of
Yeah,
people will follow you. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I am into telling the story as it relates to the point. And I guess that's
Mark.
kind
See,
of
that's what I was
communication
kind of. You know what? You
101.
you put the right I mean to, but like, yeah, I'm glad you said that because I didn't point that out. But now that you mentioned, that's how I feel. It's more of leading with your vulnerability, and then working from there. Which again, I'm not saying is right or wrong, but it's just different. It's a different
It
thing.
is
But
different.
it's
It is different, and it's a different way to tell. Now, I
yeah,
don't. The jury's kind of out on if that approach really works with an employer,
It
and
depends
I
on who's
think
interviewing you.
yeah,
and it depends on the job, because if it's not a need to know, then
yeah.
you're really giving away valuable information that could work against you, not for you. But if it's something that really works for you, maybe that might be the reason why you're called in. So cool, that works for you. But there's some other people, I'm not so comfortable about sharing about my mental health and sicknesses if it's going to bleed over into what kind of time is going to draw away. We talk about time off. So okay, so is this person going to ask for a whole lot of time off? Will they be available to do this job? If they're asking those kind of questions, it's a double-edged sword to me in that sense. But
I
I
think
think
you have to be able to read people,
ultimately,
though, don't
you
you,
got to
Jack?
read.
I mean,
That's interesting. So, like, you could kind of judge, will this person be interested in hearing it, or because that happens to me all the time. Like, both in professional and personal life. You kind of bring something up, and then you gauge their reactions, and like, okay, this isn't. They're not interested, and then you got to kind of okay, and then go a different
Right.
route.
Right.
So
Well,
that's
and
a good
then too,
point.
and another angle to this is that perhaps it will weed out the people who really don't want to listen, engage the people who do. And but again, whether it's good for the employer, or somebody might be interested in hiring you, or somebody might be interested in referring you, that jury is kind of out. And I don't know if there's a measurable for that. But for somebody, it works out there. And at least from a LinkedIn standpoint, the algorithm and the followers seem to respond to that, which I don't know if that's wise, if ultimately you want to put your brand out there to so you could be hired. So all of that to say is that you kind of good storytelling, you got to kind of know what the employer wants. And
yeah,
again, is I agree with you. All three of us are writers in the sense that we can tell a story. It 1 to 3 sentences many times could complete what the thoughts that you need to make and be able to communicate to the reader.
Just to switch.
I think it's a skill to be able to go into a situation like an interview, or even be on the phone with someone and kind of scope them
Mhm.
out and figure out, well, I'm talking too much, I need to be quiet, or
Yeah.
I shared something slightly personal and I kind of felt like that was not going to, like, they didn't respond to it in a certain way, so maybe they don't want to hear that. Or
Right.
I I was a print journalist for a long time, so I had to interview all these different people with different personalities, and I would get the talkers and the wanting to bond with you a little bit, and then I'd get the ones who were like,
Hmm.
"So what's your next question?" You know, you kind of had to adapt, if you wanted to get the
Yeah.
information that you needed. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I think I learned through podcasts and um, that when you ask questions, there's some people who are really good. You don't expect them to be able to answer in bite-sized portions. Um, but podcasting is a little bit different. You can really go deep, and that's something that people are listening for. They're listening. It's okay to do the 20 minutes to an hour as opposed to television. You get 3 minutes or less, and then you're pretty much done. So I think, yeah, you have to really think about your audience as to what's going to be the right kind of stories
And
to
now we
tell
know
and see
why
how they
it's so
respond.
complicated, right? This is
Yeah.
why it's so
Right?
complicated getting a job.
Hey, Ruth, can I ask you
Yeah,
this
it
question just
is.
to switch
Sure.
gears a little bit? So, as a confidence coach, I'm a big believer when people interview, you may not have all the skills, but if you come across confident and charismatic, you have a better chance of beating out that other person who has more skills than you and the better background who doesn't come across confident. So, what would you say to people who either lack the confidence in themselves or just don't know how to come across in a confident manner? So, because I do think that's sometimes the difference between getting that job or not getting the job.
I think you have to practice. I mean,
But how do you practice that? And I don't mean that like
well,
I'm curious, like I'm generally curious. Like, how do you?
well, for one thing, you can get a coach.
Okay.
But another thing is you can talk to a trusted mentor, professional mentor or friend,
Mhm.
and you can practice talking about why you're a good fit for the job that you want to go after. And you can practice things like, mitigating your nervousness by just putting your hands on the table and not moving them. You can practice making eye contact. You can practice just I'm going to breathe before I start. You can practice pausing. Know that it's okay to pause and be quiet for a few seconds. I think it's not for somebody who's not naturally confident, it can be difficult. I also think that if you are prepared when you go into a situation, if you really understand why you're qualified and what the company does and how you can help them, you will feel better because you understand what you're going to be talking about. A lot of people in an interview situation, a lot of people go in and they're just not prepared. And they don't understand what the questions might be about. They haven't really thought through how they're going to talk about themselves. All this stuff works together. But practicing can never be wrong. Just reviewing how you're going to present yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. I like the fact that the practice, I do see that in a lot of candidates, that the ones who kind of know it, they have an elevator pitch, they have it down pat, they've said it a million times, they did their research, they like stalked the interviewers on LinkedIn and social media to see who they're about.
That's
They've
right.
asked friends, "Do you know Mark? Do you know what's about? Like, what sports team does he like? Is he a football guy?" So then when they go into the interview, they may put aside like whatever innately confident, but they're confident in that moment in time because like, wow, I'm armed with all this information, and then I can't wait to go to the interview and share it all.
It's just it's easy to talk about, but the truth is that when you go into an interview, you're in a situation that's not common. I mean, how many people
Yeah,
spend their lives going to interviews?
it's so
It's not
awkward.
the same as having a conversation with someone outside of an interview. You feel nervous. There's something riding on this. There's a power differential.
Yeah,
I mean, so you just have to do the best you can and be as prepared as you can. That's what I say.
that's good advice. And that's you know what? And
Yeah,
that's
I
good
like that
advice in the
too.
sense, Ruth, that could be done. You don't have to change your personality. Maybe you can change your personality at a certain age. But we could debate can you not, but you can do the homework and you can do the research and you can have your pitch and you can practice it so that you have control over.
Well,
Mhm.
that's right. And I also think that to a certain extent, understanding that if you don't get hired, your life isn't over is good too.
Yeah.
Like, people say don't be attached to the outcome. Well, there's some wisdom in that because if you go in there and you say, "This is great. I'm going to talk to some people about a role that I'm really interested in, and I'm going to share information and learn, and I'm just going to enjoy myself. It's a conversation. It's an exchange. I'm not going to worry about I'm going to do my due diligence, but okay, I get hired. It's great. If I don't, it was good. I networked. I met some new people. You
So it's
just it's
managing
a
his expect
mindset.
it's managing your own expectations going
Yes,
in instead of like either I get it and I'm a winner or I don't get it, I'm a loser. It's
right.
like, no, I'm just going for this conversation. I'd like to get the job. And if I get it, that's great. If not, that's okay. I'll try again somewhere else. So you kind of go into it not putting so much stress on yourself and so much
That's right.
anxiety on yourself. Okay.
Because I can make you feel
It
really.
works.
Yeah.
I was going to just say it worked when you have multiple interviews that you're going on. If you just have one, most people are banking on the one to work, and that's where this all breaks down. That's why we all talk about, having multiple interviews so that you have multiple options. The more options you have, the more confident you have. I mean, if you're at the final interview for one and you're just beginning another and you're in the middle of the other, all those kind of they bleed into it because you got options coming up. When you don't have options, it's hard to be confident. In fact, you might be more on the side of insecurity because you're thinking if you blow this opportunity, you won't. It'll take a long time to drum up something else. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, and they begin to wane in their confidence, and it takes them a while to generate some to get back out there again.
Yeah.
Do you ever have a client that you just grab them by the collar? Say, come on, be more confident.
Yes.
Do you do that? Is that as part of the?
Well, I mean, I do a lot of my work digitally, but yeah, I'd like to. No, I've had clients. I can think of one in particular who he's never been very good at owning the successes that he's had in his career, and it just amazes me. It amazes me because they were great successes, and why would you feel bad or guilty? I don't know what the emotion is about sharing this stuff with an employer.
Interesting. Why do you think
It
that
I
is
is?
think
too
sometimes
Yeah.
I have a theory that there are a lot of people who are building their careers on the back of the competition people you graduate from high school or college with, or you can begin to compare
Oh, so you're
yourself
not
to
thinking of
other
yourself. You're
people
thinking
who
of
are
like, I'm
together.
comparing myself to this other person, and even though I'm
So they think,
successful, yeah,
or they're even family members who
yeah,
who really are achievers and are up there as far as they're concerned. While you're here back here, you do what you do. You don't lead a exciting life, and you determine in your head that it's a failure when really it's all how you view it. And it's not great to compare yourself, and that's the
so what you're saying,
hardest
Mark,
thing to
is
do.
I got to surround myself with real losers so I can always feel good about myself. Is
Well,
that's the secret of
that
success?
Opposite,
well,
actually.
that might not work either because there's that
No.
theory out
Okay.
there. There's that theory out there that you're like of the five people that you're around the
Oh,
most.
right, I've
So
seen that.
therefore, yeah, I mean, I don't know how
Wait
true
a
it
minute.
is
I'm
from
around
the
my cats
data
and
tells,
dogs
but
most of the time. I'm in trouble.
well, yeah, and sometimes they come and show themselves, and that might be a sign. But you never know. But yeah, I do think that people really do they can compare themselves to others, and they think, oh, all these people are doing these things, and here I am. And your gifts are different. And I think once people realize that, then there's a realization that they should be able to continue on that path that they're on because that
Yeah.
was the right path for them.
And I
They
gotta, and
not
I want to say
Go
something
ahead.
about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
When I work with a candidate, I help them understand that there are things about their backgrounds that can be appealing to that employer. They are thinking more like, these are the things that everybody has in the field, and I should have these things, and I need this, and I need that, and I need this. And I always say to them, no two people are going to have the exact same qualifications, first of all.
Right.
Your job is to show the things about you that are really extra value for, like, do you speak a foreign language? Do you have an additional certification?
Mhm.
What is it about your background that's very interesting? We could tease that out and then showcase that as a thing that you have. You aren't like anyone else, and that's good, and you got to
Yeah.
capitalize on it.
Yeah. That's how you stand
That's
out.
interesting.
But we are at near the top of the hour. So
That went
Ruth,
quick.
thank you so much.
It was
That went
fun.
Yeah, as
is it me or
always,
that went
we have
really
a great
quick? How did that?
we have a great time
Oh
talking
boy.
with folks, and then all of a sudden here we are. So Ruth, what is it you got coming up that you want to share with the people? Do you have a podcast interview? You got are you being quoted in an article? This is your chance to brag about that one
Oh
thing
wow, I'm
that
unprepared.
is.
I'd like to just invite people to visit my website, confidentcareersearch.com, and sign up for my newsletter.
Yes, we have that here on your bottom third. So definitely people should go ahead and check out her website and maybe even check out her services, see if it'll be a fit for you. Jack, you got anything going on?
Just kind of what I was saying, definitely check out, uh, my work on Forbes. And lately, I've been writing a lot about the metaverse, virtual reality, augmented
Hmm.
reality, NFTs, trying to kind of get a better understanding and sharing it with Forbes audience, because this is such a cool, innovative, interesting space that
Hmm.
I'm kind of I'm really excited about. So if you're interested in that space, or just all sorts of career related advice, guidance, what's going on, what the hot jobs are, definitely check out the stuff. That'd be awesome.
I highly
Good deal.
recommend.
And your podcast, Happy at Work,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you begin to
yeah,
that's
that's
beginning
cool. We're
to
getting really,
yeah.
really great guests and really learning a lot. Um, it's cool. It's cool. And it's fun to just have, like we have here, like that, just a nice conversation. No,
Hmm.
it's such a reprieve from when you turn on cable news and you just have 5 boxes of people yelling at each other, instead of just like
Yeah.
having grooving and just bouncing off each other with the goal of being positive, instead of like fear fact, making everything scary and fear. So I love that. I
Right.
love this, what we do here, and like these kind of podcasts that are just, you walk away smarter than when you started. So it's great.
Hmm. Yeah, yep. And of course, my podcast, The Voice of Job Seekers, always feel free to download that. But definitely writing more for lenza.com. You can go to lenza.com/insights. That's where their blog is. And a bunch of us are writing a whole bunch of stuff. So
Great.
career and job related. And also, I have one coming up for Career Addict. I think that will be in the works within the next couple of weeks. We'll see how that goes.
Excellent.
In the meantime, thank you all very much for joining us. We'll be back next
Excellent.
Wednesday,
Thank you.
where Michael, one of Jack's dudes, is going to
Yeah.
moderate
Yeah.
a discussion between Jack and I.
All right,
So
Michael.
so we're looking forward to that. That's a different twist
Yeah.
on what we
Yeah.
usually do here. In the meantime, peace and valley of love. We'll see you guys
Thanks. It
next
was nice meeting you, Rick.
Wednesday.